As Becky introduced me, my name is Cheray, and this is my story. I was born in 1972 to a small-town auto mechanic and stay-at-home mom. At the age of 3, my life would drastically change forever. My parents were declared unfit due to my mother's neglect of us, and my 3 brothers and I were removed from the house. The same night my brothers and I were removed from the home, my dad killed himself. 2 days later, we went to his funeral, and then we had to return to our foster parents. I would then spend from the age of 3 to about 5 in foster homes in various small Kansas towns. We were all separated. 2 of us went to Washington, Kansas. My baby brother and I were in a foster home together briefly in Frankfort, Kansas, and then separated. I would also spend time on a small farm in northeast Kansas. At the age of 5, we were reunited with our grandparents and our mom in small unincorporated Baileyville, Kansas. At the age of 6, my mom decided that my grandparents had things under control in the raising of us and ditched us and abandoned us, leaving us with our grandparents. At the age of 10, my grandfather, who was physically abusing me, began to also sexually abuse me. Physical abuse included, but was not limited to, being whipped with a bullwhip, thrown around my room like a rag doll, and once he beat me until I almost urinated myself. Throw into that mix the emotional abuse. The sexual abuse started as fondling and moved into oral sex. He had already been physically and emotionally abusing me between the ages of 7 and 10. During this time, I attempted suicide twice and tried to run away a couple of times. Running away never worked as my grandfather controlled the entire county we lived in. The last straw was at the age of 15 when I discovered my pubescent brothers had been going into my room, and I vehemently stated no one was allowed in my room. My grandfather went off and called me a bitch, a whore, and a slut, and told me he could go into my room anytime he felt like it. He ransacked my room, tearing my curtains off my windows, turning my bed upside down, and taking all of my drawers out of my dresser, then dumping my clothes out. After I was done hanging up laundry, I had to go clean up my room. After he had fallen asleep after Sunday dinner, I lied to my grandma and I told her I was going to bike the back roads. Instead, I biked to nearby Seneca, Kansas, and found my high school counselor. I told her I was not going back home and that I would kill myself or her before I went back home. I would spend the next 6 months in a foster home about 3 to 5 miles from Smalltown, Kansas. In July of that year, I went to live with my mom, who I thought had her act together and was living in Topeka, Kansas. I wish that I could say life was happily ever after and getting out of the hell on earth I was living in, but with it brought future relationship issues and challenges. I ended up in and out of temporary living situations, being homeless for a bit, and going into a foster home. I had already found my first abuser, and I was 3 months pregnant when I graduated from high school. I gave the baby up for adoption. I would later go on to be in 3 abusive relationships and dysfunctional relationships. The second one brought me the major joy in my life, my son, Anthony. I vowed to keep him and break the cycle of abuse. The important thing is that I have survived just about everything there is to survive in my life. I don't have chapters, I have books, it seems. What I have presented to you today in regards to my grandfather is just a sample of what I went through. My grandfather has been gone now for about what will be 2 years in October. I cried tears of relief and joy at his funeral. Relief, I was able to speak my mind to him during his last days of semi-lucidity, and joy that I was finally free of his physical presence here on earth. If it had not been for Deb Brown asking me to speak at 140 Conference Des Moines, I don't think I could have had the courage to speak out about this very painful part of my life. Twitter, Facebook, and blogging have given me outlets to speak out about this. Additionally, small-town America is not immune to these horrible life events. For some reason, there is a mentality that it can't happen in our town, or that it only happens in the city. I encourage all of you to watch out for signs of child abuse. Don't be afraid to stand up for a child. You could be the difference in an abused child's life. I wish I would have had someone there to notice me and help me get out. That's all the time that I have.